Welcome to Unleashed and Empowered, the podcast for visionaries and hard-led entrepreneurs who refuse to shrink or settle. I'm Alice Taugs, your host, guide, and fellow traveler in the messy but magical journey of entrepreneurship, blending spirituality, energy, intuition, and AI to amplify aligned business and personal power. Through raw conversations, both solo and with inspiring guests, we explore the moments that change everything, helping you trust yourself, redefine success, and create with courage and ease. You are exactly where you're meant to be. Let's dive in. Welcome to our very first podcast episode of 2026. I know this one is very well overdue because the last one was, I think, September. So apologies for that. We're back. We're back with fresh energy. We're out of the hiding. We're out of the excuses, because if we're always trying for everything to be perfect, then obviously nothing ever gets done. And we all know about that too well. So you might be hearing the dock in the background, and that is okay. My hair is not sitting perfectly today because it's far too hot to actually blow dry the hair. So you're just going to get the real and non-edited me, which is perfect. What I really want to talk about today is the real work that I think we all have to do in 2026. If you're a conscious solopreneur, then what I'm about to tell you is not new to you at all. You know that the old way doesn't work and it hasn't worked in a while. You know that hustle is unsustainable and we're not here for the hustle mentality anyways. And you already know that alignment matters. And that's obviously something that I talk a lot in my business about through the work of human design. So those conversations are done. We don't need to dive into that. What has really become crystal clear now is that there is something different going on and something far more demanding. Knowing that the old model is broken, that is no longer enough because awareness without execution has quietly become the new bottleneck that I really want to jump into today. So we now have to try and figure out what is it that we need to create and build that replaces the old system and start setting us up for a really prosperous future for 2026 and moving forward. So what I'm seeing everywhere is that conscious entrepreneurs aren't burnt out anymore per se. They have basically stalled. They have not stalled in motivation and not in vision, but in momentum. And you have the insights, you have the values, you have the tools, but what is missing for a lot of us is the compounding traction. And that's sort of where we fall a little bit flat. And that's obviously where some of our feast and famine sort of mentality and realness really comes in. So things move, but they don't stack up. The effort is applied, but it doesn't multiply, and progress happens, but then it resets. So it's not a mindset issue. It's not a consistency problem. Mind you, sometimes it is a little bit of a consistency problem. And it's not because people are doing things wrong. It's because businesses are still being built as a series of disconnected moves, often borrowed from a stage of business that they're not actually in yet. What I mean with that is that a lot of us are in business stages and we're then trying to apply all these tactics, all these methodologies from business that are far further advanced than we are. And therefore, what we're doing is we're really only going to set ourselves up for failure and not for success. So no systems, no architecture, no compounding layer. And that's really kind of the problem. So here is what that looks like in practice. We are all told that we need funnels. We all need some sort of a lead magnet for people to kind of discover us and then have a funnel for them to sign up into our ecosystem. Then we're told we have to add AI on top of this layer, and we don't really yet know how to incorporate some of that AI effectively and efficiently. And then we have human design, where we have all the insights in the world, but we're not having the instructions on how to then translate that into real business strategy and a real competitive advantage. So funnels don't work if your message isn't clear. AI feels overwhelming when it's taught as a replacement instead of support. And human design looks like absolute fluff when it's
not translated into decision structure and business architecture. And right now there is endless noise about AI agents and automation. Don't worry, even I haven't really fully wrapped my head around AI agents just yet. The one thing that I obviously use religiously is ChatGPT, and I'm obviously trying to automate things through some of the AI layers that some of the software that I'm using have incorporated into their business offering, but I haven't really gone much further than that for now. So most people are either trying to do everything at once or they're avoiding it entirely, but both really miss the point. So you don't need more tools, you need coherence. My recommendation really is pick one or two things, start experimenting with them, because that's already going to give you a greater advantage compared to doing nothing or, as I said, trying to do everything all at once. So the businesses are struggling right now. They are not failing. They're operating inside a model that is no longer really matching and working for our environment. And then identity is no longer an optional part of our infrastructure. And that is really an uncomfortable truth. And that's something that I have been sitting with over the last 12 months. Yes, I love sharing, all the travel that I'm up to because I adore and love my travel. And that is part of my DNA and part of my identity. But how to build an effective personal brand so that you become the key person of influence is something that I haven't yet fully leveraged and not something that I have stepped into. But if we want to make a difference in the world and if we want to be of service to a wide range of people, we need to position ourselves in a way that we are known for what it is that we do. And so this is the part where probably many of us need to come a little bit out of the hiding, including myself. And we just need to start really communicating what is it that we're standing for, what are our standards, how are we going to see that there is problems that we can potentially solve for the people that we're working with. So we all need to create a business that is rooted in genuine identity, because then that becomes harder to replace through AI. And it is also something that is not going to be built on borrowed tactics from other people. So that's really something that I wish for all of us in 2026 is that we're becoming really, really clear around frameworks, around what it is that we extract as gold for other people. And that's something that I'm going to touch on a little bit later on in this podcast episode as well, on some of the ideas that I have around that. The other problem that I'm seeing is that insight has reached its absolute peak limit. We have never lived in a world where we have suddenly become so aware of what's going on, about our energy, about the patterns, about the moon, about the cycles, about the strengths, the blind spots, the way that we can sabotage ourselves. So we have so much knowledge. And when we then don't embody that knowledge and we don't translate that knowledge into strategy, that's sort of something where we can get a little bit stuck within that as well. So knowing yourself does not automatically tell you how to design scalable offers. It also doesn't automatically tell you how to pace your work across the year, how to make clean decisions under pressure, and how to grow without betraying yourself. So awareness without the translation into architecture creates friction. It explains why something feels wrong, but it doesn't fix what's actually causing it. When it then comes to alignment is not something that you feel. It's then something that you design. It shows up in how decisions are being made, how offers are being structured, how time is allocated, and how growth is sequenced. Because when it just stays conceptual, it is just something decorative that we're all talking about. But when it becomes architectural and when it becomes ingrained in everything that we do, that's then the competitive advantage that we can have over our competition and over other people, because guess what? There is only one person on this planet Earth that is exactly the way that you are, through your human design, through your lived experience, through the people that you hang out with, through everything that is going on in your life. And if you make that alignment piece and your personal identity and your personal brand your key differentiator, it's going to be very, very hard for AI to replace all of that. And I know if Stephen listens to this episode, he's like, I have been telling you that for a very, very long time, Alice. Yes, I do listen sometimes. The next part that I'm absolutely obsessed with, and for those of you that have worked with me in 2025, know that this is not something new that I'm talking about. What I have come to realize through the work that I'm doing with human design and through the work that I'm now doing with Sassy is that we have to extract our intellectual property in a way where we can share the gold and the nuggets with other people that is not just purely reliant on our time. What I mean with that is if I was to, I don't know, like write every single human design report for every single person by hand and then do a one-on-one reading, that would greatly impact my capacity to earn money. So what I had to do was the first step back in the days was that I had to automate the generation of the human design reports. And so I've invested in software and I had literally written out 350 plus pages of human design nuances. What happens if you're a projector? What happens if you're a manifesting generator? What happens if you're a 3-5? What happens if you're an emotional authority? So all of that was written out. And then all I had to do was put in the variables. So put in the time, place, and date of birth for someone. And what it had sped out at the end was a complete human design report. What used to take me hours then took me minutes, which then increased my income potential. What I then did was I then obviously took all that IP and then I put it into Sassy, which is our AI strategist that is now translating a static PDF into architecture, into offers, into sequences, into messaging, which is just absolutely mind-blowing. And so this is what I mean with creating IP, creating leverage through the help of AI, because quite frankly, what Sassy spits out, I wouldn't have been able to learn probably in 30 years of in-depth education around human design, gene keys, and astrology. It probably would have taken me longer, where I had to really kind of like map out and intertwine all those different schools of knowledge to come up with what Sassy can come up in split seconds, which is really quite phenomenal. So we're all sitting on gold. That gold can be extracted as frameworks. It can be extracted as books. It can be extracted as a piece of podcast or a Substack article, which is the latest thing that I'm sort of a little bit interested in, or into systems. What it does is your business is then not just reliant on you as the output. So people can listen to my podcast episode, they can listen to reels, they can read on my website, they can read my articles that I have written, they can consume round about 7 hours worth of content to get to know me, to then make a decision whether I'm somebody that they want to work with. So much better than having to jump on one-on-one calls with everyone in my ecosystem all the time for them to figure out whether I'm somebody for them who they want to work with in the future. So you can see how some of this stuff is really compounding. My two beautiful bridesmaids, Sonia and Sophie. Sonia has just published her book in New York. Sophie is about to publish her book within the next couple of months. These are all assets that are going to build programs, that are going to build content. You don't constantly have to think about coming up with new stuff because you have already bottled everything into these pieces of knowledge that you can then leverage and dissect into smaller forms and start utilizing within your business. This is also where AI fits in because, as we all see and as we all know, the market is moving so quickly at the moment that if we don't use AI, we are going to lag behind. The amount of speed that I have been able to tap into pivoting in my offers, pivoting in my messaging through the help of Strategy by Design and Sassy has been really quite phenomenal, because when I launched Sassy, I really didn't know what that was going to turn into. So I had to play around with, do I put this as a 7-day trial? Do I put it as a one-off payment? And when the market doesn't respond, you then quickly just re-strategize with your bot or with AI, and you can then launch the next iteration. So you can fail faster and you can launch then quicker, which hopefully then translates back into income for you and your business. So AI purely by itself is not the strategy. It's simply the scaffolding that then supports your entire business. But the human still needs to provide the direction, the clarity of where you physically do want to move into. And this is something else that I have been seeing in entrepreneurs as well, is we actually don't know which stars we're aiming for. And so if you don't really know what you're aiming for, then the universe also can't meet you halfway. So that's the first real piece of the puzzle as well, trying to figure out, in a world that is still largely an oyster of what we can tap into, we need to figure out when enough is enough and how much of the pie we actually are aiming for. And that is never the same for everyone. And that's why I have sort of objected to this whole notion of everyone, wants their 7 figures or everyone wants their multiple 6 figures. That is not the case for everyone, because everyone's unique circumstances do look different. And that's then the piece that I'm really going to concentrate on much, much more moving forward in 2026. It's something that I started playing around with in 2025, but I now know that this is a competitive advantage that people can tap into. And I call that the energetic business architecture. This is where everything comes together. Human design and energetics, we're never meant to stay just in the realm of self-discovery. It is a design system that is here to be translated into advantages and into our life. So it tells us how the human behind the business is supposed to run the business to not burn themselves out. And that is the layer between who you are, how you work, and what you're building. And when a business is built that way, effort stops leaking, momentum becomes repeatable, and growth no longer requires that self-abandonment. And so 2026 is actually going to reward realness. And, I'm going to give myself permission to show up exactly as I am. I'm sure there's going to be times when I'm still thinking that, I need to have the hair perfect and I need to have the makeup on and God knows what. But this year, people are going to struggle to differentiate between what is AI and what is not AI. The tools are moving so fast. So I think the more raw, the more authentic that we can be, and that doesn't mean that we need to be louder. It doesn't mean that we need to be busier. It doesn't mean that we need to choose every single tool that is out there, but we need to be coherent. We need to be in integrity. We need to be in alignment. And for me, that obviously also includes the energetic design. So obviously, it's also identity-led, it's structurally sound, and it's system-supported. Because as we all know, if we don't have the foundations in our business right, then we are not going to be able to scale at a level that doesn't require more input from us and more work from us in the back end. So businesses where the human leads and the system does the heavy lifting, that is going to be the system that is going to work moving forward. And luckily, I'm a tech geek, I'm a tech freak. So for me, that really all comes very naturally. That intersection of entrepreneurship, of spirituality, of AI, of energetics, that all to me is a very, very common language that feels really good in my body. And so that's really what I'm going to be doubling down on, and where I'm trying to establish myself as a key person of influence in 2026 to really bring that message to those people that are feeling that something is still missing. So to bring it all together, to wrap it all up, this is what I think is going to move the needle in 2026. As I already said, energetic business architecture. So building a business designed around how you're actually designed to work and lead. A powerful personal brand not performative, not overexposed. I'm certainly not someone who's going to dance around TikToks and all that rubbish. That is just not me. Grounded, lived experience, authority, and clarity. And then extracting your gold. This is going to be the key as well. Turning your wisdom into frameworks and assets that can do the heavy lifting even whilst you're on holidays. So people can discover you, learn from you, and work with you whilst you stay in your genius and do the work that you love to do, that you're meant to be doing. And that is how businesses are going to scale without becoming soulless in this year. So if this resonates, you probably feel it as at a cellular level. It's not something that is going to be mind-blowingly different from what I have been saying in the past. It's just something for me that I wanted to wrap up in a little bit of a bow, put a little bit new language around it, because I've had so much clarity now over the last couple of months of what it is that I'm here to do, the work that has evolved with me, and through Sassy as well, and the language that I now have to start articulating that. And that's my phone going off. So keeping it real. So if that resonates, it's not because it's new. It's not because, this is mind-blowingly different. But for me, I think, this next chapter of business isn't louder. It's cleaner. It's more precise. It's more deliberate. And it requires us to build differently, and not just to think differently, but really embody and build differently. So if you want to stay close as this all unfolds, the best way to do that is to sign up to my emails, to read my Substacks, and obviously to start listening again to the podcast that I will be recording. So thank you for being here. I'm still going to interview fantastic people in 2026 so that you can hear other stories as well of people that have built a business that had those sliding door moments and that are doing things differently. So welcome to 2026, and I can't wait to see what unfolds for all of us.